Billy the Liquor Guy here. The story you're about to hear, Under Too Long, is the story of bombs, drugs, untaxed alcohol, terrorism, and the undercover agents who brought it all down. Thanks for being here. Episode 5. In this episode, the stakes get personal. As undercover deals grow more dangerous, betrayal and loyalty blur into one. From risky drug buys to offers I couldn't refuse, each move pulled me deeper into a deadly game. With lives on the line, including my own, there was no backing out. Let's dive back into the story.
Chapter 12, Double J. As my time with Double J increased, we developed a friendly relationship. Like most bad guys, I saw through the criminal and took a liking to the person behind the element. Double J was a typical guy, like you or I, only with different circumstances. He had a humorous side, and when he wasn't running his crew, his tough facade melted into a relaxed individual who was somewhat fun to be around. I felt like this understanding is what made me a better undercover. A lot of others disagreed, but they never worked a day undercover. Double J had a family he was providing for. He had an apartment that needed water, utilities, cable, and children who needed to eat. He didn't want to take from the system because he felt he could do better. Unfortunately for Double J and his family, better didn't equal going to school to become a doctor or a lawyer. Instead, like most street youth, better was becoming the head of the family, be that with the mob, drugs, or stolen goods. In those regards, Double J had succeeded, and thus far, there had yet to be anything to slow him down. From the beginning, Double J seemed like my laid-back motif. I acted like I didn't give a shit. I dressed in what some would call sloppy, but what I considered comfortable. I kept the guys at the bar and my surrounding clientele busy with small talk. I'd spend an hour shooting the shit about the Yankees game and then turn around and spend 5 minutes discussing untaxed liquor sales and other criminal activity. And it worked. Double J would be so relaxed by the end of the conversation that he didn't mind asking me or telling me about other illegal elements that I could get involved in. To him, I was just an everyday thief, quick to make money and leave. As I walked into Softail the next afternoon, prepared to make another deal, Double J was nowhere to be found. I sat at the bar chatting with 2 other patrons and Walt before I inquired about his absence. "He's out back," Walt said. "He's had a tough day." I walked out back to find Double J seated on the back steps smoking a joint. He looked solemn and there was no smile to be found when he looked up at me. "You all right, buddy?" I said, taking a seat next to him. "I lost my nephew yesterday," Double J replied, taking a hit from his joint. "He was stabbed to death outside of a nightclub. Some sort of misunderstanding about a girl." "Shit," I said. "I'm so sorry, Double J. When are the arrangements?" My sick mind already spun with how I could make this development work for operation. The obvious answer was to attend the funeral. I think they're going to be in the next few days. The police still have to release the body. My poor sister. I don't know how I can help her. "You can," I said. "All you can do is be there." Double J took a long drag. "I'd like to come to the services if that's okay. Show you and your family how sorry I am." Double J looked at me as if I'd just set the bar on fire. "If it's too much, let me know. But back home, that's what we do. We come to pay respect." Double J nodded as if he understood and then passed me the joint. I wasn't prepared to smoke. Unlike my time with Nash, I'd promised my crew and the Attorney General that I'd stay out of hazardous situations. Now here I was, a camera hanging off my jersey, smack in the middle of one again. Double J nudged my leg, referencing the joint he had waiting for me. Without hesitation, I took the joint from his hand and took a hit. I tried to block the camera with my arm and suppress my cough, but I wasn't anywhere ready for what Double J passed me than I was with Nash. With one hit, my lungs were gasping for fresh air again. My body contracted with each forceful cough, so much that I thought my temples might burst. Just like Nash and his team, Double J laughed at me. "That's some heavy stuff for an old white guy," I choked out. "Yeah, white people usually don't like this stuff. It's too harsh for you guys. But this is the shit we grew up on. This is quality stuff." Double J rambled on about weed, quality, and its cultural differences while I scrambled to pull myself together, thinking of a way I could backtrack this situation on tape. Instinctively, I bent over with the joint so it was in full view for the camera and pretended to take a drag and then choke again. Double J was so busy talking that he didn't catch on to my supreme acting performance. Deep down, I hoped everyone behind the scenes would buy it as well. I never even asked if you need anything from me, Double J said, taking another hit. No, I'm good for a bit. I just have a shitload of Jameson that I need to get rid of, but I'll bother you with that later. I'll take that shit, man. Fucking bar's always full of Jameson drinkers. Business is still business, even when someone dies. Life still goes on. I'll give you a good price for your nephew's sake. You'll be happy. Man, I'm always happy with your shit. You're always full of surprises. You ain't seen nothing yet, I laughed, feeling the effects of the weed I couldn't handle. That's how long you were in there, Tony said, holding up a completed crossword puzzle. And you can bet I am not attending any funeral service with you. So you better find yourself another undercover to accompany you on that one. Tony wasn't the only one convinced that I had no business attending the funeral. The entire agency went around and around discussing surveillance costs, crew members, and liability. You have no business there, Stan said. It doesn't offer any headway in our operation. Only it does, because this will make Double J and I closer, I interjected. I don't give a fuck about you and Double J, Stan sighed. You've got to get your head out of your ass, and his ass for that matter. You're too concerned with this guy. It's crossing the line. I'm beginning to wonder if you're taking this too far. How do you expect me to go deeper into the drug trade with this guy without obtaining his trust? Your boss wants a big fucking deal on the table, right? Well, here's your chance. Attending this funeral will make Double J feel closer to me, and as we all learned from our diligent studies, the more he feels like we have a valid trusting relationship, the more he will confide in me for bigger prospects. Even if I said yes and agreed to this crazy idea of yours, I don't have a partner that I can send with you. Frankly, Bill, no one feels comfortable working with you anymore. You're too unpredictable. Making one of my guys go with you now puts me in a bad light. I'll go, DEA Dave said, raising his hand. I've been dying to work alongside Billy. DEA Dave was an untamed agent. He was 5'8", 150 pounds, and looked like a UPS driver. He had thick, shaggy hair that was always in his eyes and a thin mustache. He was in his mid-40s and had spent a lot of time working with biker gangs, since he had an extreme amount of motorcycle knowledge. DEA Dave was known for being wild and crazy as he took risky chances, but he also was an agent who held a strong position in the Blue Knights, a private police officer motorcycle group. You're buying in this shit, Dave? Stan asked. You want in on this? I do, he said, stepping forward. He'd yet to let go of the metal chain that connected his jean belt to his wallet, a trait he sported while undercover with bikers. I've been waiting for another chance like this for a long time. These guys don't deal in motorcycles, Stan said, running his finger through his thinning hair. As I am aware. Well, Stan said after a moment, you two have one chance. You fuck this up or take any risky moves that puts our team in danger and you're out, Attorney General or not. Billy, are we clear? Can you define risky before I agree? I said, hoping to gain some levity. DEA Dave burst out laughing. You crazy assholes can get yourselves killed however you like, Stan yelled, but don't you think you're getting a special funeral with a fucking bugle. We don't cater to suicides. Now get the fuck out of my office before I kick your intolerable asses out myself. DEA Dave and I escorted ourselves out with Stan's pygmies right behind. Well, Dave, I said, shaking his hand, you want a suit? Hell no, he said. Do you? Nope. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page. 2 days later, DEA Dave and I were on our way to Rochester, New York for the funeral. The weather had begun to turn, transforming the thruway into a blanket of red and orange. Pretty enough to almost make you forget the day-to-day shit you're dealing with, DEA Dave said as we drove along. I looked out at the changing leaves. Years ago, I would have been accompanying my wife and kids to pick out pumpkins and pick apples. Now here I was far away from home, mentally as much as physically attending a funeral to score points with a bad guy. The line for the funeral was longer than I expected. Apparently, Double J's nephew was fairly well known in the community, as people from all over were waiting to pay their respects. Good luck, DEA Dave said as I stepped out of the van. I'll be listening in. Wearing a wire to the funeral seemed somewhat invasive, but I knew my boss had already bent enough. Asking him to forego the wire would have pushed him over the limit. Plus, deep down, I was hoping I might catch a thing or two while I was there. And if I happened to catch that thing or two on audio, the opportunity to prove myself and rub it into Stan's face would be well worth it. I made my way to the back of the line, which I noted hadn't moved since we pulled in. Automatically, I knew that the wait time was going to be the worst for me due to my apparel. Sporting pressed khaki pants and a pastel polo shirt, I was far from my everyday comfortable clothes. My feet had already begun to swell and sweat inside my brown dress shoes. Within 30 minutes, I'd only moved from the outside to the inside. The extra bodies crammed inside did little to curb my sweat and discomfort. As the line edged closer to the parlor, I could hear rap music playing. It was the first time I'd been to a funeral without the traditional sad music. Young kids were running in and out of line, and somewhere in the crowd, I could hear their relatives telling them to go back inside and sit down. I'd always hated funerals as a kid. I never understood why my brother, sister, and I had to go. It was boring and full of crying people, and if we didn't sit still, we'd take a smack in the back of the head. I used to tell my siblings that all dressed-up events were merely a stage setup for children to fail in front of their family members. Most of the funerals I had attended also had police escorts. There was always a cousin or uncle who'd gotten released from prison for the day so he could attend the funeral. I never understood this to be abnormal until I was older. Imagine that. A kid watching his uncle arrive to the funeral parlor dressed in orange jumpsuit, his feet and hands shackled together, while police officers stood by his side. The last funeral I attended had been my aunt's. My cousin Larry had arrived in shackles and cried like a baby beside his mother's casket. I remember watching in horror as this tough-ass cousin of mine, who'd been in and out of jail for as long as I could remember, had to be pulled from his mother's casket and dragged back to the police car, kicking and screaming for his mom. Mom, his words filled my ears. My mom. Mom, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry, Mom. I shook the thought from my head just in time to see Double J approaching me. You came, he said, placing his hand on my shoulder. My brother, thank you. Of course, I said, it's a tough time. I wanted you to know I was here for you. None of my guys came. They couldn't get here, no cars. Oh, I'm sure they would have come if they could have. They're here with you in spirit. They're here with me as long as the money is, and don't think I don't know different. Double J pulled me out of line and walked me into the parlor ahead of everyone to the casket. It was closed. His face was too messed up to show. Double J whispered, "That's too bad," I said, bending down to say a little prayer. Dear God, watch over this boy and his family. Keep me safe while I'm here and never let me know the pain of having to bury one of my own children like this. After I stood up, Double J led me around the room, introducing me to his friends and family. This is Billy, my brother from another mother, he said. I met Double J's entire family, his business partners and his girlfriend, who was about 8 months pregnant. I didn't know you had a baby coming, I said as we walked away from his woman. Yeah, my 6th baby. It's a girl. I'm thinking of naming her after my mama. 6 kids, God bless. I don't know if I could handle one. I spent an hour inside the parlor. By the time I'd left, I met so many people, I couldn't remember one of their names. You were quicker than I expected, DEA Dave said as I re-entered the vehicle. Tony told me horror stories about you and your chatty escapades. I laughed at DEA Dave's words. I needed that, I said, fastening my seatbelt. That was intense. I think it was a little more than intense, DEA Dave smirked. Dean already called. She wants you in the Syracuse office first thing in the morning. Dean was a senior investigator for the drug task force. She'd been working beside us throughout the operation, but she'd been fairly low-key, allowing Sam to run the show. Her need to see me meant one of two things. I'd crossed the line, attending the funeral, and she was going to take matters in her own hands, or I just discovered something that she needed to address. You think it's good, I questioned? Can't be anything worse than what Sam said and done to you. Point taken. DEA Dave and I spent the next 2 hours discussing funeral stories. Turns out I was right. I was the only fucked up individual who grew up thinking that his family members arriving handcuffed from prison at a funeral was normal. Chapter 13, Criminals Pyramid. Tony and I walked into the Drug Task Force office at 9:30 the following morning, wondered if I was about to get my ass handed to me. Dean's assistant escorted us into a large office where several top drug task investigators were already meeting. I recognized most of the gentlemen straight away. Some I'd been introduced to through fellow colleagues, and others I'd heard about, read about, or seen from afar. They were in the middle of a heated discussion. Paperwork, large banded printouts, and yellow notepads filled the tables and laps of the investigators. Welcome, William. You're just in time, Dean said, interrupting their conversation at hand. Please take a seat. The assistant pointed to an open seat beside Dean's empty chair in the center of the room. I hiked up my khaki pants. I'd been smart enough to arrive somewhat refined this time, and casually nodded to the gentlemen who were staring at me. Mr. William and Mr. Anthony, Dean addressed us. I want to thank you for taking the time to come here this morning. As you can see, my team and I have been up all night unfolding everything that you brought to light yesterday. As I looked around the room, I noticed the hair that was sticking up the back of some of their heads, the red eyes, and the 5 o'clock shadow. Before we go any further and dive into our findings, I want to congratulate you on thinking outside of the box and taking a chance several agents would not, she said, her hands clasped together in front of her chest. You stood up against all the naysayers and went after something you knew would be better for the job, even when others didn't. For that, we say kudos to you. Everyone around the table nodded their heads and smiled in approval. Yesterday, you pieced together one of the largest puzzles that we've been trying to put together for months, Deanne said, walking to a whiteboard. We wanted to invite you here so that you can see what your hard work did. A young, strong agent seated to Deanne's left popped out of his seat and flipped the whiteboard around, revealing a giant pyramid of faces. Over 30 pictures, all strung and linked together, stared back at me. On top of the pyramid sat one familiar face who seemed to look directly into my soul. Double J. William, what you're looking at is the largest trail of drug lords in the upstate New York region. When we got word that you would be attending the funeral, we had a backup team follow with surveillance for our own curiosity. What we captured was amazing. My mind wandered away from what Deanne was saying and back to the board, where I attempted to process Double J's face taped on top. Is the head of the traffic ring? My mind heard her say. Over 70 connected individuals running underneath him, even linked to your contact in Albany. There, next to several of the faces I recognized from the funeral, was Steele. Several other offshoots were strung from Steele's picture, including the cousin from the stoop. Then I heard Deanne say, without intending to, you just tied together one of the largest drug trafficking cases in history. I sat there gobsmacked. I wasn't sure what to say or what to do. We received an order from the judge last night allowing us to tap all of their phones. We'll be busy monitoring everyone's conversation from this end. That we can handle. What we need from you is to keep pushing. Keep them on the line and see what else you can get. How far are you asking me to go? I inquired, my eyes still glued to the numerous faces on the board. As far as you can, she smiled. You've proven that you can go beyond expectations for the job. We simply want you to continue on that path. I'm not sure how much more our boss will allow us to continue to explore here, if I'm being honest. We're tied to our agency first, I added, trying to unravel the connection between Steele and Double J in my mind. We don't need you to do anything different than what you're doing already, Deanne stated. All we need is for you to try and strike up conversations about these guys. See if you can help our team link them together even further. He can't, Tony spoke up. For a minute, I almost forgot he was there. He's already in too deep. He's on an assignment with the PATB unit and the Attorney General. You can't stretch this man any further than he already is. Deanne smiled at Tony, borrowing a sweet mothering regard. I'm touched by your concern, Tony. You two work incredibly well together, which is what we believe makes you such a success. But I would like to hear Bill's response. Deanne and Tony turned to look at me. Well, I said, wiping my sweaty palms over my pants, Tony's correct about our obligations. I don't want to say no and toss this aside because I might be able to bring some things up that would be helpful for you. However, I'm not looking to be held to any more promises or additional work. Deanne leaned in, looking directly at me. William, you're an incredible agent. You've proven to everyone that you're a valuable commodity to this case. And if this goes down how we want it, you will go down as one of the most influential agents in history. For walking into a funeral, I laughed. It was the same stroke I'd gotten from others who wanted in, just under a different agency's name this time. No, Deanne said, standing up straight, her eyes still locked on mine. For taking the chances other small-minded agents have been too afraid to do. The table grunted with several and head nods. All eyes were on me, and the attention made me feel drunk. I don't like to promise anything I can't deliver on. That's not in my nature, I said. I respect that. I can try and bring a few things up. If conversation flies, then it's yours to run with. But other than that, my guys and I will be out. We come as a unit, Tony reminded Deanne. Those guys are up until 3 a.m. uncovering notes from the funeral. So this is as much extra work for them as it is for Billy. Which is why we like to add our own guy onto your surveillance crew. He'll only be there to gather information for our purpose. This way your crew isn't responsible for anything other than what they're currently assigned to. That seems right by me, I said, looking at Tony. How does it sit with you? I don't think it matters at this point. All right, I said, standing from my seat. We'll let you guys hash out the details with the general's office. Tony threw a cut and look my way and rose from his seat, ending the meeting. Deanne thanked us for our time, did a round of handshakes, and ended with a few more appreciation mentions. As shitty as it was to admit, that had yet to grow old. Billy, remember, we're here if you need help with anything, including sand. Is he aware of this meeting? I asked. He is. However, he's currently taking all the kudos at the Attorney General's office as we speak. She smiled again. You are aware that's how this line will go down, aren't you? Sand will ride your ass and step on your toes, but when it comes down to a win, he'll happily collect your recognition and still give you shit. That I'm well aware of. It's the nature of the business. Luckily, I'm okay with that. My face isn't one that tends to shine on the news. Back in the van, Tony laid into me for seemed like the 100th time. When I said it didn't matter, I meant it didn't matter what I said, not that it didn't matter to the case. How the hell was I supposed to know that? I said. I'm not a speech interpreter. We've been partners for almost a year. You should know what the fuck I mean by now. I apologized to Tony, but he didn't seem ready to let it go. You saw Steele up there, right? I remarked after a few minutes of silence. That one got me. Tony didn't answer. We've been dealing with him for months, and now here he is, with his face linked to Double J and guys in Pennsylvania. Tony drummed his thumb on the steering wheel. You thinking I should try my spiel on him? See where it gets us? You're going to do what you want, so go ahead, Tony sighed. See where it gets you. We're already over our heads as it is. What does one more matter? Now, when you say what does one more matter, am I to think that it really doesn't matter, or should I think that it does? I'm obviously not good at this shit. I don't know how the fuck I got assigned to you, Tony said. You drive me absolutely crazy. You know that, right? Tony, I drive everyone crazy. That's the beauty of me. You're a beauty, all right. So you're cool with it? Just get it the hell done. At this rate, it feels like these cases are never going to end. I laid in bed that night, tossing and turning. I kept visualizing Double J's picture at the top of the drug pyramid and Steele's face at the bottom right. In all my findings with Steele, be it the liquor sales, cigarettes, stolen property, money laundering through the pawn shop, and underground club exposure, I never thought about venturing into the drug realm. We had so much on him that the avenue somehow slipped my mind. Yet now, I couldn't escape it. As we drove to Steele's house the next morning, I felt Tony's unease. His jaw was tight and his knuckles were white as he gripped the steering wheel. I won't bring you in, I told him. Stay in the van and distribute liquor like normal. I'll keep this as a side business. I wondered if I was being selfish, if I was putting Tony directly in the lane he was trying to avoid. Yet, at the same time, I knew that if I was going to break into Steele's drug ring, I needed my partner. Introducing a drug proposition without Tony or a liquor delivery didn't seem too well. By the time we pulled up to Steele's home, the color had faded from Tony's face. Trust me, I said, you won't even know it's going down. I wouldn't do that to you. Tony stepped out of the van, slamming the door behind him. He was pissed. I knew. But this was more important at the time. I figured I could mend him and me. However, a drug trade that never happened, I couldn't. Steele had two guys in their mid-20s with him. This is Antoine and Herschel, Steele said as they approached the van alongside him. Antoine and Herschel, my mind repeated, wondering if their faces were on DN's border. The new helpers didn't say much. They lifted liquor from the truck so Tony and I didn't have to, and loaded into the back of Steele's shiny Cadillac. Steele, you got a sec? I asked, motioning for him to walk with me. Steele followed me to the front of the van. Listen, I don't want Tony to know what I'm talking to you about, I said, but I'm looking for some help. You in trouble, Billy? No, nothing like that. I need help with my lady. Steele stepped back and looked at me, his forehead creasing above his eyes. I quickly ran into the same J-Lo girlfriend routine that I'd won Double J over with. This old guy isn't getting laid without, and my guy from Binghamton has shown up empty-handed for 2 weeks now. You know someone who could hook me up? Man, Steele said, laughing, you had me going there for a minute. I was afraid to know what kind of help you needed with a lady. How much you looking for, man? An 8-ball, if I can get one. But I'll take whatever. I just really need to get laid tonight. I can't let your love life affect my sales, Steele smiled. I'll get you what you need. Steele turned and walked over to the two gentlemen who were finishing their final haul. He whispered something to them and then turned and gestured towards me. The tall guy to his right nodded and walked into the house. I stood there, hands in my pockets, anxious as hell. It can't be this easy, I thought, but it was. Steele's guys walked up to him, slipped something in his hand, and headed back to the car. Write the cost off with the liquor, Steele said as he handed me an 8-ball. The less cash rendering, the better. No way, Tony said as I showed him the cocaine. You just fucking bought drugs from him just now? Fucking crazy, right? I smiled. Billy, at this point, everything seems fucking crazy to me. And just like that, we delivered what we promised. At least we thought we did. Chapter 14, Mark's Brother's Routine. You can't exchange liquor for drugs, Sands said the following afternoon. It's considered null and void. You have to pay cash. But they're buying the liquor at the same time that we're buying drugs, Tony interjected. That makes it a tad conspicuous, don't you think? I hate to put you boys in another sticky situation, but unfortunately, this is out of my control. For the DA to successfully prosecute Steele, we must eliminate any factors that can make the state's case less credible. Exchanging liquor for drugs could be considered entrapment. I ran my fingers through my hair, tugging at my scalp in frustration. Fine, I sighed. We'll figure a way around it. Tony glanced at me. What do you want? I snapped. We've got nothing else, so obviously we have no choice but to figure it out. That seems to be our answer for everything, Tony snapped back. We're in charge of running cases, figuring out everything along the way. What the fuck do you guys do? Tony looked at Sand, whose face had turned red like a beet again. I know this seems like a stretch. Hey, stretch my ass. This is fucking draining. Every step forward is 2 steps back with you guys. Again, I understand your complaint. I want off, Tony interrupted. Find someone else to replace me. Tony crossed his arms over his chest and sat back in his seat. It was the first time I'd seen him so angry. Look, Sand, we're tired. We worked until 9 p.m. last night, and now you've got us back down there for another meeting? That puts us behind again. All these meetings just make more work for us. We can increase your overtime pay if that's what helps, Sand said. Increase by how much? Triple. I turned to face Tony and Stanton, who was quietly seated beside us. Stanton raised his eyebrows. We know how hard you guys are working, and the last thing we want is for you to get burnt out. Hopefully, this can help in some way. Think of it as money you can use to take your family on a vacation after all this is over. That was exactly what Tony needed to hear. I knew part of his aggravation stemmed from not being able to go home at night. He was missing his kids and his family life. That's a good start, I said, looking at Tony for reassurance. He nodded. While that's on the table, we need to discuss something else with you. Sand folded his hands together. The Attorney General would like you to consider wrapping up your case on Thirsty Bear. He thinks it would help speed everything else along if you spent less time there. Panic shot through my body. No way was I letting go of Nash's case. I'd spent too much time gaining his trust. I'd formed a business relationship with him, and as fucked up as it sounds, I wasn't ready to give that up. What's the general's theory behind closing this particular case? Stanton questioned. He believes Bill hasn't uncovered anything significant there. He sees it as poor time management at this point. We've calculated his visits. Billy spends approximately an hour and a half there every week. This is concern for the general. Billy has obtained significant liquor sales inside that bar. I'm not so sure the general sees it that way. You idiots have no idea what I've uncovered with Nash, I broke in angrily. That man has hundreds of thousands of dollars of illegal material coming in and out of his bar. Illegal material isn't going to make the front page. Nobody's going to care about a few televisions or stereos hidden in a basement. We're dealing with real shit that people care about, Billy. People want drugs off the street. They want to feel safe in their neighborhood. Ask them to choose between uncovering an illegal drug ring or a stolen television operation that's hurting corporations already bankrolling on their customers. And I'm going to guess you know what their answer will be. Everyone has their way of saying potato, I replied, and your agency is no different. You believe it's all about the headlines and recognition. A little more calculating on your end might show that untaxed liquor sales creates $1 million revenue loss for New York State every year. I think the taxpayer might be a little interested in that, especially since their taxes go towards that loss. Gentlemen, Stanton interrupted. Before this meeting gets out of hand, I'm going to stop you. Billy's not going to end his running operation to focus on your cases. You asked him and his team to be under your wing to help push along your sting. Now, he'll most certainly continue to get you what you need, but our agency isn't going to get fucked as a result. At the end of the day, we will still need to maintain the presence and liquor sales that we've built our operation on. If that's not clear, then Billy walks away from your case today. Sand sat back in his chair, defeated. I'll inform the general, he sighed, but please take into consideration what we discussed. I already have, I said, rising from my seat. We'll handle the drugs in cash, and we'll take the increase overtime. From that moment on, my job became a matter of balance. 1 minute I was wheeling and dealing drugs for the Attorney General while helping infiltrate Dion's case, and the next I was selling untaxed liquor for the PATB. It became a tricky role to balance, but I had no choice other than to find my bearings, and to find them quickly. As for Steele, that was a little more tricky. Listen, Tony isn't comfortable with the drug sales, I told Steele upon our next visit. I'm not going to be able to exchange liquor for any purchases. That has to be on my own from now on. I want Tony happy. Steele and I stood inside the small 4x4 entrance of his 2-story home. It seemed a little awkward, but Steele didn't seem put out, so I stood there anxiously discussing my new proposition. Whatever makes your man comfortable, Steele shrugged. That's cool with me. Can I get 2 8-balls this time then? Since we're cool and all, I teased. Shit, I'll give you all my inventory if you want, Steele laughed. Always happy to get this shit off my hands. Don't joke with me, I said aloof. I make several deliveries a week. It would be too easy for me to add some of your special shit to my load and sell it off as incentive. Tony walked up the driveway with the liquor bill and squeezed his way into the hall with us. Steele counted his money and handed it over to Tony. Tony, in turn, counted out the money and handed it to me, to which I turned and passed it back to Steele. For the double 8-balls, I smiled. Steele looked at us if we were the biggest morons on the planet. You two are really fucked up. You know that, right? Tony and I smiled in unison. So we've been told, I said, happily pocketing the 8-balls. See you next week. As we walked out of the cramped entrance, feeling like the biggest bunch of idiots, Steele called out to me, Hey, if you're serious about more, give me a call. Might be worth a chance. I saluted Steele and the Ian's phone tap validation and stepped in the van. Think that was good for the assholes upstate? I said to Tony, knowing the camera and the audio equipment was still rolling. I think it'll show the court system how clueless the state is when it comes to undercover operations. That's for sure. Tony smiled, putting the van in drive. Bunch of pristine desk boys, I laughed, happily knowing that our hallway interaction looked as foolish as we could make it. I can't wait to see the confused faces on the jury when they show that tape. Chapter 15, A Gift. With Steele taken care of, my next act of business was getting Nash into the scene. I figured if I could get him on board, I'd be able to show the general just cause, but I had no such luck. Word on the street is you're getting more than your share of cocaine from the Jamaicans, Nash said, wiping down the bar. I think it's safe to assume, my guys, and I don't need to be part of that. To my surprise, Nash's response made me happy. Even though I wanted him to stay on course, in that moment I realized what I was asking him to get into. This would be major jail time for Nash. And when it came down to it, I liked him. He was a businessman. Yes, he was running some illegal shit through there, but he worked hard, and I respected that. Serious prison time wasn't what I wanted for him, bad guy or not. You don't fuck with blacks or Jamaicans. Do you understand that? It's bad for business, Nash instructed me. Nash, I know these guys aren't like you or I, but they have money. And right now I'm just trying to make a little extra side business. I'm not looking to be their best friend. Sooner or later, they're going to bite you in the ass, he said, pointing his finger at me. You're right about these guys not being like you or I. They have major criminal records, and they're involved in a lot of heavy shit that we're too smart to be part of. Hell, we've made it this long averting police. You're smart enough to realize that those idiots are being watched. They're targeted from the moment they walk down the street, guilty or not guilty. And if they're being watched, that means you're being watched too. Well, let me ask you something, I said, leaning across the bar. You rent the bar to that fucking moron for face value when you know Double J's running it, right? You're using Walt as a front man to make sure no one else knows that a Jamaican is running your shit. So why aren't you complaining about the extra business or fucking worried about being watched? What the fuck do you know? Nash sneered through yellow teeth. You fucking think you can come in here and tell me shit about my bars and my business? I immediately knew I'd pushed Nash too far. The veins in his forehead were turning purple. I needed to backtrack quickly. Look, Nash, I apologize. I said, lifting up my hands and leaning back from the bar. I don't mean any ill intent. I guess my emotions are running high because you're questioning my business. I'm just trying to make some extra money, and I thought you understand that part. I mean, you may not be directly working with those guys, but you're still making money off them. Maybe I'm being greedy, but I want part of that too. As strange as it sounds, the look upon Nash's face was crushing. Just like that, I watched all the respect I worked hard to gain drained from his face. Listen, Nash, it's just another customer to me. You and I know these guys won't be in business long because they're idiots, I said. You're right about that, Nash mumbled under his breath. So why not take the credit now, I pleaded. Dive into that shit and make some extra cash before they ruin it for themselves and get locked down. What the fuck do you think I've been doing, he said, his voice tense and low so others couldn't hear. You've got a lot to learn about business yet, Billy, and about keeping your mouth shut with it. Now that one you might have me on, I smiled, but you got to hold yourself a little accountable. You sent me down there to that idiot, Walt. You didn't even give me a heads up on his face, for crying out loud. Despite his anger, Nash couldn't suppress the smile that spread across his face. I wondered when you're going to say something about that, Nash laughed. Fucked up, ain't it? He's like the real elephant man, I exclaimed. Wait, you think we could make money off that? Maybe instead of celebrity bartender nights, you could advertise an elephant man bartender night and bring people from all over to come and see him. You really are trying to make more business, aren't you? Nash laughed. You're one money-hungry son of a bitch. Yes, sir, I am, I said, raising my glass in a toast. Money and women are what move me, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. Ain't that most men? Nash said, pouring himself a shot of Jack Daniels and tossing it back. Billy, Nash called out as I reached the door, I still don't want those motherfuckers coming to my bar. Got it? I wouldn't think otherwise, I said, stepping out of the dark bar and into the welcome sunshine of a spring day. Despite Nash's misgivings about my time and the Jamaicans, I found myself heading straight over there to grieve the inevitable decline in partnership with Nash. I don't want to be here all night, Billy, Tony said as I stepped out of the van with a baby gift in hand. Compliments of a savvy co-worker. I'd like to get a solid night's sleep for once. I felt like an average guy who just come in from a hard day. I walked over to my stool, grabbed a handful of bar pretzels, and ordered a Jack and Coke from the usual bartender. You here to see Walt or Double J? Butch, the tattooed bartender, asked. I let out a small laugh when he said Walt's name. I've been coming to the bar for months now, and Walt was the furthest thing from a successful criminal I could have imagined. How ironic is it that Nash had sent me to one of the most underwhelming individuals, thinking he had access to drugs and profitable shit, when lo and behold, it was the Jamaicans he hated who were running the operation all along. Who do you think? I said in joking manner. I'll get Double J for you, he smiled. He's right out back. Double J walked into the bar with his arms spread open and a big fucking smile on his face. Billy, he said, his accent dragging out the Y. You bringing me something good? Not this time, I said, staring into my drink. I'm just here to tell you I got into it with Nash. Hold on, Double J said, taking the stool next to mine. What you mean you got into it with Nash? You two have a fight? Not really a fight, but a business misunderstanding. Oh, Billy, don't say you screwed Nash out of something. Him and his motorcycle guys will be all over your shit. No, nothing like that, I said. Nash didn't want me doing business with you anymore. He can't see us working together if I kept ties with you in his bar. Double J waved the bartender over to pour him a drink. I can't let someone's racist views get in the way of my business and my life. Double J sipped his drink and continued to listen. He wanted me to choose between business with you and business with him. I choose you. And I'm not telling you this because I want a pat on the back. I'm here because I want you to hear what happened from my mouth. My business with Nash is ending. Thirsty Bear is going to be dropped from my route soon. So from now on, I will come directly to you with my scores. If you like them, fine. If you don't, I have other people I can go to. I just want you to know that I've been giving you priority over Nash for a few weeks now, and after today, it remains that way. You know, I have never been inside the Thirsty Bear, Double J said. Even though those guys buy drugs from the outside of the joint, I know if I stepped foot in the bar, there would be problems for me, only because I am Jamaican. Not because of something I did to them. That I can't understand, but for the safety of my family and my guys, I don't fight that. It's not worth a war, and it's bad for business. So I'm respectful. I stay away and do not enter his space, but he should have no problem with you just because you work with me, which is why I can't do business with him any longer. I respect Nash and his business, but I can't work with someone whose views I don't respect. You are my main guy now. Double J and I sat in the same spot for an hour talking about life, war, racism, and family. What if we merged together, I finally asked. I've got customers across the board. What if I began selling your shit to them? We could become partners. You said before you don't drive. Tony and I could be your exporters, help you get to larger destinations. I've got a lot of partners right now, Double J remarked. I encouraged the conversation, and slowly Double J began to list his partners' names and where and how they helped him in the cocaine trade. I did a mental high five with each name and location he gave up. What about the Albany area? I continued. We're down there a lot. You can't have guys out there too. Double J smiled while he fed Dion a fresh trail of breadcrumbs that glanced over steel. I almost spilled my beans about working with him, but I wasn't sure if that was a good thing or not, so I held back. But I am always open to more possibilities, Double J finally revealed. I can help you grow your business if that's what you need. I think it might be, I said, finishing my second drink, especially since I'm wrapping up Nash's end. He dealt in a lot of products for me. You and everyone else. Bars across the board will be upset to hear his news. They waited on his deliveries. What deliveries? I inquired. You knew he was selling your shit, right? You didn't think he needed that much liquor every week for just his bar. The stacks of liquor in the basement suddenly popped in my mind. In that moment, despite how in control I felt over my undercover work, I realized I'd let something slip. In all my excitement to work with Nash and build a big case, I missed the giant fact that he wasn't buying liquor for his bar alone. I missed my big case with him. Selling untaxed liquor to other establishments was a whole different ballgame when it came to the state. Wow, you learn something new every day, I told Double J. Yep, your man was stealing from you right under your nose. Didn't even give you a chance to work with the other bars because he had them in the bag. I slammed my fist on the bar, not sure if I was frustrated or playing the part. My head was too scrambled in a moment. Nash isn't really your friend, I reminded myself. This is all an act. You played him, remember? Let's do a deal then. You good to start next week? I asked Double J, shoving back my stool. I've got a guy coming in Thursday. Come here around 8, and I'll set you up with a trial run. Double J said, patting me on the back. We'll get you back in shape. You don't need Nash any longer. His last sentence was a truth serum. I didn't need Nash anymore. It was time to put his case to bed. I got you a little something, I said, pulling a pretty pink box from the floor. For your little one. Double J looked at me as if I had two heads. Man, you really are something, he said, tearing into the gift. Double J held up the pink frilly dress. Tears welled in Double J's eyes as he pulled me in for a hug. I gave him a hard pat on the back. None of my guys ever gave a gift for my child before, he said. Thank you. Chapter 16, Offer I Had to Refuse. The deal I established with Double J was for a kilo of cocaine. The product was arranged to be at Soft Hill, where other factors slowed Double J's driver, forcing Tony and me to hang inside the bar. Over the past few weeks, Tony had grown comfortable inside Soft Hill. This isn't to say he was comfortable as he'd been in Thirsty Bear, but it was a start. As an avid dart player, Tony took to showing the Jamaicans a thing or two on the old machine they pushed into the corner. To Double J and Tony's surprise, his guys took to it quickly. Look at you bringing your white boy here, corrupting my men, Double J joked as I sat at the bar discussing sales. Hey, he's doing you a favor. You know what they say about idle hands, right? He's keeping your men busy. Double J's supplier was coming up from Pennsylvania and was already 2 hours late. 2 hours inside a bar was more time than I ever planned to do. I grew antsy in my seat, checking my watch and cell phone several times with each hour. Man, let me hook you up with one of the girls, Double J said, gesturing to a group of prostitutes at the far end of the bar, to make up for your time. No, I'm good, I said, stirring my drink. Butch had poured this one a little strong. I'm serious, Billy, he said, dragging out the Y in my name. What do you want? They'll take care of you, and they don't even need any coke like your woman at home. Thanks, but I'm good. I laughed, hoping to deflect the situation. All that gets me off in a moment is a whole lot of cash. I'm fine waiting. Billy, I'm not going to take no for an answer, Double J said. It's disrespectful for a man to refuse a gift from another man in my country. Well, we're not in your country, I teased him. Besides, those girls look young enough to be my daughter. I can't do that. Okay, so we get you a blowjob. Keep her head under the table so you don't see her face. Double J was serious. I looked at Tony, but he was lost in his own world. The one time he was actually enjoying himself among the criminal element. Double J, I appreciate your offer, but I'm not going to take any of these girls, I said matter-of-factly. If you're concerned about how I feel, I'd much rather have you pick up the phone and find out how far out your guy is. We plan to bring our first delivery tonight. Double J stared at me. You really want me to tell that a big man like you running around buying 8 bucks for coke for some mama at home doesn't care about getting laid? Am I supposed to believe this? That you're only interested in business? It's the only way I can get off anymore, man. Plus, I said, leaning forward, I don't have any little blue pills. A light bulb went off in Double J's head. Oh, man, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I thought only old fogies had that problem. But I guess big men can have them too, right? He laughed. You don't have to laugh about it. No, man, I'm sorry, he continued, trying to suppress the chuckles that were still emerging. I don't mean no disrespect. I just didn't expect that. Well, now you know, I said, looking back up at the television. Soccer was on again. But you do need to either call your man or change the channel. I can't sit here and watch this shit much longer. I'll call, and I'll see if I can get you one of those blue pills, too. I wiped my sweaty palms on my pants. If Double J were to find a pill, I was fucked. There was no way I could get out of this, yet there was no way that I was willing to take a woman for the team. Hey, Double J yelled from across the bar. You got 30 more minutes? I nodded at Double J and watched as he made a few more calls. I prayed that they were business calls from his end, but deep down I knew he was searching for that pill. I slid off the stool and headed over to Tony, pretending to be engaged in their game. We have to go, I whispered as we walked by. Tony looked at me mid-throw. Now? As soon as the sales arrive, understand? Of course I'll get a bullseye, he stated loud enough for the other guys to hear. Good, so be on point. I'll get the sale, and you get us the fuck out. Tony's body went tense. I didn't have time to tell him what was going on, but he knew enough to understand that danger was involved. After a few minutes of boring throws, I made my way back to the bar and waited. I had to use every ounce of strength within me to bind myself to the stool. Deep down, I wanted to call it a night and bolt. I've got one guy looking for you, Double J said as he walked over to my seat. Thinks he might have something. Double J, business comes first. Are we clear on that? Man, no need to get your whites in a bunch. We'll get to your business. No worries. Listen, can you just sit and have a drink with me already? I asked, pulling out the stool beside me. You're making me antsy with all your girl bullshit. I convinced Double J to have a drink with me. One drink turned into two. Just before Double J could pour a third, his guy pulled in. Double J excused himself and headed out back with three of his men, while I turned and nodded at Tony. Double J returned with a smile plastered across his face and proudly set 16 8-balls, enough for a Class A felony, and a little blue pill in front of me. Did I tell you my guy would come through for you or what? He smiled. The blue pill seemed to grow in front of me as my mind raced. Go on, Billy. Double J prodded me with his elbow. Take the pill. Enjoy yourself. Business is done. Billy, we gotta go. Something's wrong with the liquor. Tony rushed over with his phone out. Shit tipped on a delivery. Bottles are all over the highway. We gotta help the guys clean it up before the cops get there. Shit, I exclaimed, jumping up from my seat. Those idiots are always fucking up. God damn it. Pretending to be enraged, I shoved the Coke and blue pill into my pocket and headed towards the door. Sorry, man, I turned to Double J. Next time. Go take care of business, Double J said. That pill was a fake anyways. We hoped it still might work for you. I looked back perplexed while Double J laughed. That asshole was going to give me a fake pill. Consumed with the fake pill and the crisis I just averted, I neglected to feel the 8-ball slide out of a large hole in my pocket. Tony and I jumped in the van, quick to hightail it out of there, just as Jeff and Doc tapped in their speakers. You dropped some fucking Coke in the road, you moron. Go back. I reached into my pocket, sure that they didn't know what the fuck they were talking about, and discovered the bag was missing. They were right, I said, jumping back out of the van. Fuck, I don't see it. Tony joined me in our search as we looked under the van and around the curb. Two of Double J's men were outside watching us. To the left, they called. Tony stepped to the right. Your other left, they laughed. Tony took 2 more steps to his other left and stepped on the bag. Got it, he yelled to the guys. Thank you. Tony and I jumped back into the van, our hearts racing. So far, looking like idiots was a working trait we seemed destined to follow.
Every choice came with a cost, sometimes paid in blood. With enemies watching and allies in short supply, survival meant trusting my instincts and no one else. But the deeper I went, the harder it was to find a way out. Stick around. This story's only getting darker.